Flight attendant insults Karoline Leavitt over her necklace in first class. Instantly regrets it. Karoline Leavitt, a rising star in politics and a well-known advocate for free speech, boarded a first-class flight from New York to Dallas, looking forward to a smooth and peaceful journey. Dressed in a sharp navy blue blazer, she carried herself with grace and confidence. Around her neck, she wore a delicate golden pendant, an American flag crossed with an eagle, a symbol of her deep patriotism and love for her country. As she settled into her seat, a flight attendant named Sarah approached, her expression immediately shifting from polite to condescending. Sarah was known among her colleagues for her strong opinions, and unfortunately, she often let them interfere with her professionalism. "Miss, can I get you something to drink?" Sarah asked, her tone neutral at first. Karoline smiled warmly. "Just water, please." "Thank you." Sarah was about to turn away when her eyes caught the pendant around Karoline's neck. Her smile thinned. She scoffed slightly, just enough for Karoline to notice. "Interesting choice of jewelry," Sarah muttered under her breath, but loud enough for Karoline to hear. Karoline raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then let out a sarcastic chuckle. "It's just that. Some people might find that symbol a bit divisive." Karoline leaned back in her seat, studying the woman carefully. "Divisive," she echoed. "You mean the American flag? The symbol of the country we all live in?" Sarah crossed her arms, shifting uncomfortably. "I'm just saying, some people on this flight might not feel the same level of enthusiasm about that particular emblem." A few passengers in first class overheard the exchange and began paying attention. An older gentleman in a business suit glanced over from across the aisle, his brow furrowing. Karoline, keeping her cool, smiled politely. "I wasn't aware patriotism was offensive now." Sarah sighed dramatically. "Look, I don't want to argue. I just think that, especially in first class, we try to create an inclusive environment. And, not everyone here supports, well, certain political views." Karoline's smile didn't waver. "So you're assuming my political views based on my necklace? Do you realize how unprofessional that is?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably. A few more passengers were now watching, and she could sense she had made a mistake. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I'm just looking out for the comfort of all passengers. Maybe consider something a little less controversial next time." Before Karoline could respond, the older gentleman across the aisle spoke up. "Excuse me, miss," he said, addressing Sarah. "I find this conversation disturbing. Are you suggesting that wearing a symbol of our country is offensive?" Sarah swallowed, clearly realizing she had stepped into dangerous territory. "No, sir. Another passenger, a middle-aged woman with glasses, chimed in. "I actually love her necklace. And I'm also offended, not by her, but by the idea that patriotism is something to be ashamed of." A murmur of agreement swept through the first-class cabin. Sarah's face turned red. She was clearly losing control of the situation. Karoline decided to take the high road. "Sarah, I understand we all have different perspectives, and I respect that. But when you work in a professional setting, especially in customer service, personal opinions shouldn't dictate how you treat passengers. I'm a paying customer, just like everyone else here, and frankly, I expected better." Sarah opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by another voice, this time from her supervisor, who had been watching from the galley. "Sarah, a word." "Now," the senior flight attendant said firmly. Sarah stiffened, muttered a quick, "Excuse me," and hurried away. The supervisor turned to Karoline. "Miss Leavitt, I sincerely apologize for that unprofessional behavior. It does not reflect our airline's values. If there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable, please let us know." Karoline nodded graciously. "I appreciate that. I just hope this serves as a reminder that respect should go both ways." The flight continued without further incident, but Sarah did not return to serve the first-class cabin. Instead, another attendant took her place, ensuring Karoline and the other passengers received excellent service. As the plane landed in Dallas, the businessman from across the aisle leaned over and smiled at Karoline. "I admire how you handled that. We need more people who stand up for what they believe in without stooping to hostility." Karoline smiled back. "Thank you. Sometimes, the best response is simply standing firm." As she disembarked, she walked with confidence, her golden pendant gleaming in the airport lights. A silent but powerful statement that she would never apologize for loving her country. And somewhere in the flight crew's break room, Sarah sat with a reprimand on her record, realizing that sometimes A moment of arrogance can lead to instant regret. As Karoline stepped off the plane, she could feel the eyes of a few passengers still on her, some giving her approving nods. She didn't let the situation bother her too much. After all, she was used to standing her ground in heated debates. But something about Sarah's attitude lingered in her mind. Was this really what the world was coming to, where even an American flag necklace could spark controversy? She shook her head, pushing the thought away. There were bigger battles to fight. Meanwhile, in the airline break room, Sarah sat stiffly in a chair, her face flushed as her supervisor, Mark, stood in front of her, arms crossed. "Sarah, do you realize how badly you handled that situation?" he asked, his voice firm but controlled. "I didn't mean any harm," Sarah muttered. "I was just trying to make sure all passengers felt comfortable." Mark sighed. "By making a paying customer feel unwelcome? And in first class, no less? That's not how we do things. Your job isn't to push personal opinions, it's to provide excellent service to all passengers, regardless of their beliefs." Sarah swallowed. "I just thought. I don't know, some people might find it offensive. An American flag? On a necklace?" Mark shook his head. "Sarah, we serve thousands of passengers from different backgrounds every day. Your job is to be professional, not make judgments. And just so you know, that passenger, Karoline Leavitt, she's a public figure. This story is probably going to be all over the news by tomorrow." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What? No way." Mark pulled out his phone and showed her the trending topics on social media. Sure enough, passengers from the flight had already posted about the incident. Unbelievable. A flight attendant just insulted Karoline Leavitt for wearing an American flag necklace. What is happening to this country? Just witnessed a first-class passenger get shamed for her patriotism. Good for her for standing her ground. Sarah's heart pounded as she scrolled through the growing backlash. The airline's social media team had already issued a vague statement about upholding professionalism and respect for all passengers, but she knew that wouldn't be enough. Damage control begins the next morning. Sarah received an email summoning her to a meeting with the airline's higher-ups. When she arrived at the corporate office, she was met by a stern-looking executive, a PR manager, and her direct supervisor. "We're in a difficult situation," the PR manager said. "This incident is going viral. We have thousands of people calling for you to be fired." Sarah's throat went dry. "Fired? Over this?" The executive interjected. "Sarah, our airline cannot afford this kind of negative press. What you did wasn't just unprofessional. It was unacceptable. Karoline Leavitt is a well-respected public figure, and whether or not you agree with her, she was a customer. You insulted her, and now we're paying the price." Sarah's mind raced. She had thought she was simply expressing her opinion, but now she realized she had underestimated how much people valued their patriotism. "Is there anything I can do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The PR manager handed her a paper. "We've drafted an apology statement. You'll need to issue this publicly if you want any chance of keeping your job." Sarah's eyes scanned the paper. It read, "I sincerely apologize to Ms. Karoline Leavitt and anyone else who was offended by my comments on her necklace. I understand now that my words were inappropriate and unprofessional. I deeply respect all of our passengers and regret any discomfort I may have caused." Sarah hesitated. She hated the idea of issuing a public apology. But as she glanced at the executive, who was already preparing her termination paperwork, she realized she had no choice. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "I'll post it." Karoline's response later that day, as Karoline sat in a Dallas cafe, her phone buzzed with notifications. Breaking, flight attendant issues public apology after confrontation with Karoline Leavitt over American flag necklace. She smirked slightly as she read the statement. It was well-crafted, but she could tell it wasn't entirely sincere. Still, she wasn't interested in ruining someone's career. She took to her own social media and wrote, "I appreciate the apology from the flight attendant and hope this serves as a reminder that patriotism is not offensive. We live in the greatest country in the world. Let's never be ashamed to show it." United States, the post went viral, with thousands of people commenting in support. Some even called for airlines to ensure better training for their staff. Sarah, now realizing the full weight of her actions, could only watch as Karoline's words turned the tide of public opinion once again. And in that moment, she truly regretted letting her personal bias cloud her professionalism. The lesson learned: the next time Sarah stepped onto a plane to serve first-class passengers, she made sure to stick to what she was hired to do: provide good service and keep her opinions to herself. And Karoline, she continued wearing her flag necklace proudly, knowing that no amount of criticism would ever shake her love for her country. A few days after the incident, the story had exploded across media outlets, sparking national conversations about patriotism, free speech, and professionalism in customer service. News anchors debated the topic, opinion pieces flooded social media, and even some politicians weighed in. Karoline, despite all the attention, remained calm and poised. She had never intended to make headlines over something as simple as wearing an American flag necklace, but the overwhelming support she received showed just how much people cared about standing up for their values. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself in an uncomfortable position. Though she had issued a public apology, it hadn't stopped the backlash. Some passengers from previous flights even came forward, claiming she had acted rudely toward them as well. The airline, eager to salvage its reputation, placed Sarah on indefinite leave pending further review. One evening, Karoline was invited to appear on a popular news program to discuss the situation. Dressed professionally and with her signature necklace shining against her blouse, she addressed the controversy with grace. "I never wanted anyone to lose their job over this," she said to the host. "I believe in accountability, but I also believe in second chances. The lesson here is simple. We should treat each other with respect, no matter our differences. Patriotism isn't offensive, and no one should feel ashamed for loving their country." Her words resonated with millions. By the next day, even Sarah's fate was decided. The airline officially terminated her employment, stating they had a responsibility to maintain professionalism and ensure all passengers felt welcome. For Sarah, it was a harsh but necessary wake-up call. As she packed up her belongings from the airline's office, she reflected on how one moment of arrogance had cost her everything. But she also realized something deeper. She had allowed her personal biases to affect her job, and now she had to face the consequences. Karoline, on the other hand, continued her journey, more determined than ever to stand for her beliefs. As she boarded her next flight, again in first class, she noticed a different flight attendant serving the cabin. This one smiled warmly, offering a genuine greeting. "Miss Leavitt, it's an honor to have you on board," the attendant said. "And by the way, I love your necklace." Karoline smiled, touching the pendant gently. "Thank you," she replied. "I wear it with pride." As the plane soared through the clouds, she knew one thing for certain. No amount of criticism would ever dim the light of her patriotism. And if standing firm on her values meant sparking a bigger conversation, then she was more than ready for it.